Morning, YouTube. So you can see that it's 43 degrees there, and we've lost quite a bit of snow now. There's, I don't know, probably 2 to 4 inches on the ground, maybe more under in the actual woods, but we're losing big patches of snow. It was supposed to snow this afternoon or tonight, and I think into tomorrow possibly. I don't know. The weatherman has been totally wrong no matter what he says. I mean, they write rain in their little pictures, and then in the description they write a tenth of an inch or barely any rain or, none expected. I don't get that. But anyway, that's what I've seen so far. So, I gotta get the dog out this morning. It was really foggy this morning when we woke up at first. I don't think you could see past this dead tree right here. It was really foggy, very, very foggy. And then all of a sudden it just started clearing up. So we'll see what happens. You can tell from this view here, I mean, we have dirt all the way up to the road there now. So where I plowed before the snow is gone. Hey YouTube, so one of the other things that I figured I'd talk to you about, which most people who run sawmills are the kind of guys who don't really take a lot of nonsense, and they're hard workers, and I think because of their work ethic, that's why they don't take a lot of nonsense. However, regardless of, regardless of your personality and how you handle things, there sometimes comes problems. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what's known as conflict resolution. Okay, so conflict resolution means that there's a problem with something that you're doing and you need to get it resolved so that you can continue with the project to get it finished. And it doesn't matter whether the project is real big or real small. If there's a problem in a conflict, between the two parties that are the main parties in the contract or agreement, they have to be resolved so that everybody's mutually happy, I'll say. Doesn't always happen that way, but that's the idea behind things. So it's important then that as you do business, and let me just tell you this, if you're the kind of kid that threatened other kids in school, made fun of other kids in school, beat other kids up for no apparent reason other than to have fun, chances of you doing well in conflict resolution is probably slim and none. And the further you go with that, and I'll explain it to you in a minute, is even going to be more doubtful that you'll do well. Now, that means that if your family's been around the area for a long period of time, and everyone knows them to be, troublemakers, then that's how they're going to look at you. So hopefully you don't have that problem, or people know enough to, and people usually do know enough to know who the troublemaker is and who is not. So what I'm going to say to you is, in order to go into business, let's hope that you were not a troublemaker, and that you learn that even though you may be stubborn in wanting to do what you want to do, and you feel you have a good background in it, you should still be open to things, okay? So in conflict resolution, now this is, you have a problem, you were cutting lumber, everything was going good, and all of a sudden the guy came, looked at something, and now he's upset, okay? It doesn't matter what the reason is. What matters is how you handle this conflict. Okay, you have to handle it in a good way so that everybody is as satisfied as can be when it's over. All right, so there's a couple of things in here, like number one, I think that you should learn to listen, okay? Learn to listen. Now, when it comes to my kids, I am not a good listener. I'm talking about little kids. Do what I tell you, that's all you do, and don't do nothing else. So I'm talking about kids under the age of 16. But when it comes to people 16 and over, I start to listen to their story. But when their story gets goofy, then I stop listening, okay? So what we're doing here and what we're talking about now is we're talking about adults. We're talking about people who may have the money to sue you if they have to, or people who, you know, may have a business going that could really help your business over the long haul, and that would be the way to handle things because it would help both people. And it's better to help people than to try and destroy somebody and then have them try to destroy you later on. So hopefully that you haven't had that problem. So anyway, learning to listen. Learn to listen to what's being said to you. And part of the agreement thing that I said yesterday, I talked a little bit about that. When you can learn to listen and you can hear what people are saying, you can tell by the way they're talking what they want, you can, even though it may not be anything, any way that you live or run your life, you may change it just for them. In other words, just to go to their property or whatever. That's up to you. But anyway, learn to listen. Seek resolution. Okay, so if you have a conflict, you need to have resolution. So, you know, you want to find that. And you want to find where it is, what it lies in. So you need to find out what the problem is. Hence the part about listening. Okay, so you need to seek resolution. Find out what the problem is and how can it be fixed. Might be something as simple as changing your blade on your sawmill, or it might be something that you don't even know about and you're all messed up over something because you haven't taken the time to really learn what you should have learned about what you're doing. Number three then is know all about what your business involves. So in other words, learning. Covering number two. Covering number one by knowing things. The more you know, the better off you are. Okay? If you know a lot of things, in my opinion, you're better off knowing a little bit about a lot of things than knowing one thing really well. Because who can talk to you? Someone else that knows the same thing you know? So it's better, in my opinion, this is my opinion, that you learn a lot about a lot of different things. Okay? And the more you learn about them, the better off you can be. You know, you don't let people sway you or throw you in the mud by saying, you know, a master, or what's that saying that they have where they say a master of none and a laborer of all and a master of none or something like that. You probably know what it is better than I do. I probably try not to listen to that nonsense, but I'm just saying, don't let people say things to you to goof you up. You know, try and figure things out for yourself because you have knowledge about them. The more knowledge you have, the better off you're going to be. Okay? Especially in all aspects of your business, no matter what it is. Okay, so then be respectful. Number four would be respectful of people. Okay? So, in other words, no matter how you run your life, and this is a life thing, this is something I would be teaching someone who's prior to 16 years old, but I'm just telling you because it's part of what you need to know for conflict resolution. So be respectful of all people. Don't put somebody down just because, oh, you know, I don't like this guy or whatever. Listen to what they have to say. Sometimes you'd be surprised what somebody has learned when you're not around. You know, people learn things every day and they can learn all about things that you might not know anything about. So give people a chance and try and be respectful, because not only will these people possibly be somebody you'll do business with, it might be somebody that's going to either mediate or arbitrate this meeting you're going to have, or be on the be a juror somewhere. So you want to try and be kind to people, you know, be respectful. You know, I'm not saying you have to give away anything, that shouldn't be. But you should be respectful, you know, treat people the way you would want to be treated, and, you know, don't be throwing beer cans out the freaking window at somebody when you're driving by or whatever. Be decent. You know, I don't know how else to tell it to you. I have seen so many freaking people who just don't care about anything, and then they lose their car, their truck, their home, and they can't figure out why. Well, it's because you're not paying attention to what other people are telling you. All right, so those are a couple things in conflict resolution that I believe you should know and be able to handle. So real quick, learn how to listen, seek resolution to the problem, okay? Know all about your business as much as you can possibly know. And let me just explain something to you about that. You know, one time I was doing a job, I forget, I was working in another state, and I was doing a job, and a guy says to me, we only want ply score on our buildings. Well, when he said that to me at the time, I had never heard the word ply score. I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. I figured might be plywood, might be, but I better find out, it might be something else. And when he said that to me, make sure that we only use ply score. I know that my contract called for plywood on the building, but I didn't know if ply score and plywood were the same things. So I says to the guy, I know our contract says plywood. Is that the same thing as what you're talking about? And he says to me, well, I've never heard the term plywood. Now, plywood's written on the frickin' board. You would think that the guy heard of that. But apparently he was a school-driven engineer and never really worked in the field, and this is how he somehow recognized plywood. But regardless of that, he might have even been for overseas for all I know, but regardless of that, there are words out there that mean the same thing you already know that you may not know the word. So learn about those things that have to do with your business. And then the other thing would be to be respectful of people. Once you go into business, you got to start being respectful of people even when they say no to you. If you go to the bank to borrow money to buy a sawmill and one bank says no, one bank says yes, don't be against the no bank. Maybe they have rules that didn't coincide with the way you think, okay? Or you didn't tell them everything you told the second guy. Just try to be decent and patient with everybody. When you get home and you're talking to your wife and you're both alone together in your own home, then you can curse out whoever you want to, but you would be better and smarter to try and figure out what the problem was possibly there. You know, but continue on wherever you're going to get, you know, what you need to have, which is, you know, like if you're going to a bank, money. But I'm just saying, be respectful of people. Okay, so that's those 4 things. Now, the next thing is arbitration and mediation. So, and a mediator, okay, is here's how this works. And I'm going to make this as simple as possible. If you want to know the total legal aspects of it, you can look it up. But you have a mediator and you have an arbitrator. So let's talk about a mediator. A mediator is like, okay, I'm cutting lumber for you, and for some reason you're having a problem with the lumber I'm cutting, and I don't see the problem at the moment, but you do, and we've gotten to the point where we can't talk to one another about the problem because we're not solving it. So we hire someone, and this could be in an agreement, we hire somebody to be a mediator, someone that I choose and that they choose. Okay, so hopefully it'll be somebody neither one of us know, but you kind of want to know that at least they know what they're talking about. Excuse me. So the thing about a mediator, and I'm just going to go over some of this stuff, is that a mediator is usually somebody like, say, a retired mill operator, or a retired cabinet maker, someone who would know about wood. Someone who's maybe retired, has really nothing else to do, and that doesn't mean that they are retired, that they have to be. I'm just saying it might be. So they're like a professional or semi-professional. They've done a lot of it, and they've gotten around to the people that you're working for, and for you. You've heard of them, you know them a little bit. They heard them, they know them a little bit. So maybe you might both agree to say, oh look, let's have somebody be a mediator. So we call this guy up. He comes to the meeting, to just a little meeting. It can be on the phone or whatever, but I'm just saying a little meeting. Okay, I have a problem with this, and this is my problem. And I say, well, I don't really get that because, or whatever. And then the mediator will come to a conclusion, and he'll say, all right, well, just do this instead. Now, if that's okay with me, that's fine. I do it. This problem is resolved. If the other guy likes it, the problem's resolved. We're done. We're on our way. Okay, nobody's upset. We just didn't understand what was going on. We shake hands and we keep going. Okay, you keep cutting wood. Now, I know that this may not seem important for this little sawmill lumber operation, but I'm telling you it is. I've seen it. All right, so that's a mediator. Now then, if a mediator doesn't work out for you, and here's the one thing about a mediator, whatever the mediator ends up with as what he sees the problem being, you do not have to take that as the thing to do. In other words, you don't have to agree with him, and neither does the other guy. In fact, sometimes I've seen mediators screw things up so bad that both people don't agree with the mediator. So, sometimes mediators don't work. Sometimes they work very well. I've had mediators between me and a woman. I was having some trouble with a woman about the size of a building, and I got this guy involved that she knew. And when I talked to him and he talked to her, he helped me explain to her what was going on. So that was a good mediator, okay, because he explained what I was trying to tell her in her words. So that was a good thing. All right, so then we have an arbitrator. Now, mediator and arbitrator both are very, very close to being the same thing, except usually an arbitrator is somebody more of a professional. And it might have come from an organization of, lumber cutters or, mill operators or cabinet makers, that know about the lumber that the guy should be getting. So an arbitrator will be a professional. Now usually when it goes to an arbitrator, when that's the term that's used for the conflict guy to do the resolution, you normally have to take whatever he says. So in other words, if he says, yeah, you've been, the lumber's not as smooth as it ought to be, or it's not the right width or the right thickness, it has to be this thickness, then you might have made a mistake, and maybe you should review yourself, okay? Review what's going on. And then if you can handle the arbitration end of that and the results of it, then make your change and go on with it. He might even explain to the other guy, no, he's been cutting this just fine. From what I see, I don't see a reason why you can't handle this. Sometimes you get, somebody will put something together and maybe something will crack and they'll blame somebody else and this or that. And it might have been just the way they had things laying. I had a guy one time say to me, for some reason this lumber, the lumber I bought from you, and this was paneling, okay? I put paneling in my house because I want to nail it up on the wall, but for some reason it started shrinking, bending, bowing, and everything else. Here he had it in a room where there was a wood stove, and I swear to you it was 120 degrees in the frickin' house. He had the windows open and everything, trying to keep stay to the point where he could work. But it was affecting the way the wood was drying, and it was drying so fast that it was shrinking to a point that it was cracking, which was crazy. But anyway, that's just something that I was in an arbitration hearing about. And the point is that an arbitrator, and this is what I'm telling you, usually whatever his results are what you have to do. So whatever he says you're doing wrong, you have to change. Or if he tells the other guy, no, you're wrong, this has to change. And wrong may not be a big thing. Wrong may be a tiny thing, especially in cutting lumber. I mean, how big can it be? It can't be that bad as long as you know what you're doing. So you would have an arbitrator. So okay, so first it's a mediator. You don't have to go along with what his end results are for you and the problem. But then you have an arbitrator who you normally, and now it depends on the state. Some states are different, but normally you have to listen to an arbitrator. If you set up an arbitration meeting and that guy has a lawyer, you have a lawyer, and there's a guy there, you're almost going to have to accept whatever comes down the pike, okay? And hopefully you have not been beating people up all along, making people feel bad, and he knows about it, because you want to get the fairest treatment that you can get. Now, an arbitrator should be a fair person. If he knows something about you or thinks something about you that he doesn't even know is true, he should excuse himself from this thing. This is what we hope the way things go. And then the last thing you would do, if none of those things work, or you can't, or the arbitrator doesn't satisfy either one of us, and we don't really have to listen to the arbitrator, for instance, then we can go to a lawsuit. Now let me just put it to you like this. I've never been in an actual lawsuit, but I've been to court, okay, to a hearing. So lawsuits can be, or wait a second, I was in a lawsuit, yeah. There was a lawsuit that I was a part of, but not the primary. So here's the thing. In a lawsuit, here's what you have to remember. The people who are doing the resolution may not know a darn thing about sawmilling or cabinet making, if that's the place where you have the problem, okay? Or any other business that you might be in. And these things I'm talking to you about, you can use in any business. They're a point of beginning, and I'm telling you to think about them and write them down somewhere, and remember to try and expand on them and make them better. But anyway, see what happens in a lawsuit, they elect jurors to say yes or no to something. A jury might have, usually a jury feels bad about the person who's at the low end of the stick, and they try to give him a break. That may not be the real way to help or to solve the conflict resolution. It might make things worse, but usually it'll end up in money once you're in court, and you'll probably end up not doing any cutting for anybody that's suing you, and you'll end up either having to give money back, or you have to, or you'll get money, one way or the other. So that's more or less like the lawsuit part of that. So, think about it. Conflict resolution. How would you solve conflicts? And this is something you should think about before you go into business. You can't say, oh, if that guy doesn't pay me, I'll go over there and take all the wood back. Let me just say this to you. If you're living in the middle of nowhere like where I live, that might be an option. Maybe he won't go any further than that. You try that in downtown Philadelphia, to go into one of their stores and take back what they never paid you for, you might have one hell of a time, because they'll throw you in jail for theft. And then you're going to have to try and figure out how you're going to pay for that lawsuit, as well as the one where you're suing a guy to try to get paid. So you got to be very careful and stay within the limits of the law. And with that said, that's about, I just want to cover a little bit of conflict resolution. But what I want to say now about that is, when you're thinking about your agreement, you're thinking about your payment and how you're going to be paid. Look, if you're just starting out, you cannot afford to lose money. If you've been in business for 20 years, then you can afford to lose a little bit of money. And if you can't, then you're not really doing good at what you're doing. Now, there are highs and lows in business. Sometimes lumber's selling like crazy. In fact, I've seen it already where one mill will be bidding to buy lumber off of a contractor who's doing the sawmilling, or I mean the lumber, the tree cutting, and he'll be buying lumber from anybody. raising his price just to get the lumber because he has an outlet for it. So a lot of times, maybe that would be the problem. So you have to make sure that you have money to cover yourself for whenever something like that may happen or not happen. How do you do that? By saving some of your money that you're earning, okay? By putting some of your money away. Same thing with conflict resolution. Look, let's say you're cutting 10,000 board feet of red oak for somebody, or whatever pine, it doesn't matter. You're cutting something, and all of a sudden the guy has a problem. The problem may or may not be you. The problem might be him alone, but he's blaming you because he wants to try and get out of paying. So this is why you would need an arbitrator or a mediator to try and figure out what's going on here. Okay? But the point is this. When it comes to the money, if you're stopped all of a sudden in doing a project that you were relying on to cover you, and you don't have any other money except for the money that's going to come from that project, think about that for a second. That guy's got you in a good spot for, getting what he wants possibly. Now, I'm not saying that all people are like that. What I'm saying is sometimes it can go to that. So you want to make sure that as you take on new contracts or new agreements with people, that you don't leave yourself without anything on the lot. For instance, let's say I have 100 red oak logs out there, and we figured out there's, I don't know, let's say 10,000 board feet of wood. That's all. I'm just going to say it off the top of my head. So 10,000 board feet of wood, lumber. Well, if the guy buys 10,000 board feet of lumber and I find out that 15 of the logs I have are no good and I can't get anything out of them, and therefore I can't get enough lumber cut from what I have, I'm going to be in pretty sad shape if I got to go buy, at a bigger price, red oak just to satisfy, or any other wood, just to satisfy your order. So it's important that you recognize that, if you're going to take a contract that's going to use up all the lumber you have, that you have more coming from somewhere, okay? That you can work with it, that you actually own it, or someone's going to bring lumber there for you to cut, and depending upon how they work with you, either they may just give it to you for the price of logs, they may give it to you and want the lumber, but they'll sell lumber to you or let you keep some lumber. I don't know how it's going to work, but all I'm saying to you is you have to be careful that when you take on a contract for a given amount of money, that you have enough lumber to cover that thing, or enough logs to cover that thing, the amount of lumber you need. And if you can't get that lumber out of that wood, that you get wood from somewhere else. And to be honest with you, that is why I cut very little of my own trees down. Now that doesn't mean I don't cut any. It means that I try not to cut them. I have a good supply of red oak, white pine, and hemlock. Okay? So I try not to use any of my trees because I figure that, and they're all healthy, the ones I'm talking about. So what I do is I figure I'm going to hang on to them like a safety net just in case something goes wrong. So if somebody comes here and they bring me, 4 logs, and they say to me, I want red oak cut out of all them, and I'm getting a good price to cut it, just because 2 of his logs are bad doesn't mean I can't use 2 of mine and cut 2 logs of red oak and still sell him, the same lumber that he wanted to begin with. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with that. Now, if the guy brings you 4 logs and he's sitting there waiting, then you might not be able to do that. Although if he needs that much lumber, he might accept buying a log off of you if his log is no good. So there's a lot of things that go into this. And we talked about the contracts last night, and tonight I'm talking about conflict resolution only because it can happen. And it has happened to me, in different times of my life. And I'm just telling you that the basics are yourself. You yourself have to be presentable, respectable, honest as you can be almost all the time in order for people to look at you and say that you are those things. So in conflict resolution, that is a big thing to have, to be able to have those different things I mentioned so that you can deal with someone in a good way and you're not into a fist fight, just because somebody said, oh, these boards all have a cup in them, and, the cup is very minimal, but it's still a cup. So some guy's looking at them thinking about making this really nice flat tables. Well, this is what I have, there's some cups in this stuff. Can't you use this anyway or whatever? And I'm not saying he has to or doesn't have to use it. I'm just saying that if you're respectful to people, and you're willing to listen, they can explain to you what's going on, you can explain to them, and go from there. Usually people who know how to cut, and people who know how to make furniture or anything else out of wood, understand all of these things together, and they should be able to come up with a resolution of their own, just by talking on the phone about something if they have to, or, meeting at wherever they want to meet and just determine what's going on. So, when it comes to negotiating for not only a resolution, but let me just talk a little bit about this too. When it comes to negotiating a contract and a resolution and any other problem that you may be having, there's some things that you want to do that are going to help you to get this problem solved. Okay, so like listening to find out what the issue really is. That's important. I have a book here that I wrote some notes down on. To focus on the interest. In other words, what are the both interests on this thing? You're interested in getting your money, and he wants to pay for good wood. So that's the interest that both of you have. So, the money part. So you need to figure out what is the problem that money has stopped flowing. So you want to try and know about these things ahead of time, okay? Know about them ahead of time so that you're not in such trouble with that. Let's see, I have down here options. So you create a variety of possibilities before directing what to do. So in other words, like you have a problem and there's a couple of things that might take place, but you're not sure of which one to do. Like, let's say you cut a log open and the guy said, well, this tree all these logs came from the same tree, and the first part of the log that you cut, or maybe it's the top section, might be the bottom section, who knows, is bad. You might want to take it for granted right away, well, the rest of them aren't going to be any good either, just because of something you see, and then have to go run and get more logs. Now, maybe that's the right move to make, or maybe you should just try cutting them and see what's going on, and explain to the guy, hey, I cut these, this is what you ended up with, it's your wood, you told me to cut it. And this should all be part of your agreement, part of your understanding of conflict resolution, so that you can get to the point where you're doing business with one another. And then one of the other things I have down here is criteria. Insist that the result of the conflict or the result of the negotiating be done with something that resolves both your problems. Okay, look for that. Try and solve his problem and your problem. You're not getting paid, or you just can't seem to get this wood cut the way he wants it. Try and find out how to do that, so that you can get your thing together, your act together, and you can both get this money flowing. And that's the name of business. Business is all about money flowing, okay? It is not about one guy hanging on to the money or the other guy hanging on to the money. Just because somebody's in business doesn't mean that they're rich. And they could be doing $1 million a month in business and still be broke, okay? When I used to teach about money management, I used to write down on the board on the first day, this is with first year students, I used to write down, $500,000, $50,000. if one job is $500,000 and another one's $50,000, which job would you like to take? Everybody always picked the $500,000 one. But when I would write next to it that this $500,000 has a loss of $80,000, the one for $50,000 has a profit at this point of $30,000, which one would you want? Oh, that's different. And you know, the young kids today are kind of slow, it seems at times to me. But anyway, forget I said that. The point is that, you know, you want to make money, and you're better off making money on $50,000 than you are on $500,000 if $500,000 leads you into bankruptcy. So all I'm saying is to be careful to look at this stuff, and with this conflict resolution, know how to use this. Know how to deal with people. If when you talk to your wife, if you're the kind of person that the wife you have talks to you, she has issues about the kids, or even the kids have issues, and you can't seem to solve no problem will come to an end with you, then, you know, you might want to check on how your conflict resolution is. So maybe you're not really good at listening, or you're not understanding things. Of course, that doesn't mean maybe your wife's not wrong or the kids are wrong. I mean, I've found that out to be true at times. I'm just saying, you know, how have you been in resolving problems? And only you know that. I mean, you know, if you know what to do when something breaks, good. If you know what to do when you've run low on money, good. Then you're halfway there to being able to solve these conflicts. So anyway, guys, that's just another part of sawmilling that I know people are going to say they never thought about that. They never had this happen. I've been in sawmills for 35 years and never had a person say that to me. Well, I was in business for 45 years plus, and I've had people say all kinds of things to me. Not that they hurt me, not that they made me change my mind, but it was amazing what I heard. I'll just give you an example. I had a guy one time, I was building a garage for the guy. And the guy's out in this front yard in front of a tree, a little tree, and he has a chainsaw. And all of a sudden he starts cursing. And he's mad about the chainsaw. And I said, and I knew the guy was usually docile, quiet, you know, easy to talk to. So I had my guys up on the roof, they were working up there. I got down off the roof, I walked over, and I said to the guy, Jimmy, his name was Jim. I said, Jimmy, what's the matter? He said, do you believe that they forgot to give me a key with this chainsaw? The guy literally thought that there was a key to start the saw. He didn't know that you have to pull the rope and there was no key. So I'm just telling you that sometimes people don't know, okay? And if they don't know, there's going to be a conflict of some sort. So you can imagine if I wouldn't have said to him, well, Jimmy, this is how you start this, and there is no key. Chainsaws don't have keys, or at least most of them. You know, if I wouldn't have said that to him, can you imagine Home Depot or wherever he bought it, Sears, what they would have went through with him? So anyway, I'm just saying, there's a lot of things you need to know. There's a lot of things you need to cover that have nothing to do with cutting wood. You can be the best wood cutter in the world. You can get every board right at 1 inch every single time you cut. If you don't know how to resolve these conflicts, and you don't know how to make an agreement, and you can't keep an agreement with somebody, and you don't know how to handle money, you sooner or later will fail, one way or another. Or the people who follow you, after you in your business, will never be able to handle it like you did, because you just got something going for you that the other guy's not going to have. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm not saying you're no good at what you're doing. I'm just saying the more you know about these things and how to handle them, the longer lasting your business will be. Okay, guys? So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk to tonight. So I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.